the worst person in the world may have just made a good point.
Republican voters across the country are sick and tired of Republicans because they never do anything to hold this government accountable. Republicans go out on the campaign trail and go on TV and do their 5-minute hearing videos and post up on social media and say all this garbage about how they're going to fight it and stop it. I feel like many of the American people that think that Republicans in Congress completely fail them. I feel the same way, and I'm a Republican member of Congress.
And there it is. Marjorie Greene being somewhat right about something. But of course, there's tons of irony here. So, look, is she right that Republicans never do anything to hold government accountable? Yes. That's because the whole point of Republicans is to gut the government so that they could make way for, deregulation, tax cuts for the rich, etc. I mean, look at their legislative priorities that they've brought up. Gutting food stamps, eliminating welfare programs, going after Medicare and Social Security. For example, their new speaker, Mike Johnson, has supported massive cuts to those programs. In fact, as RC chairman back in 2020, Johnson authored a budget that actually called for raising the Medicare and Social Security eligibility age, which is essentially a cut in benefits. It called for $2 trillion in cuts to Medicare and $750 billion in cuts to Social Security. It also called for turning Medicare into a voucher program. Wow. And now that he is House Speaker, Johnson has called for a commission into cutting people's earned benefits. Again, all these commissions to study, how do we save Medicare? How do we save Social Security? It's all about cutting it. We already know how to save Social Security. We know how to save Medicare. Okay? For Social Security, you eliminate the cap on taxable income. Boom. Funded forever. As far as Medicare, allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices with pharmaceutical companies. Allow them to negotiate prices with, hospitals, things like that. Going to a single-payer system, by the way, would be the biggest cost savings because you would eliminate the ability for these hospitals and insurance companies to charge people and the government massive amounts of money. So, that said, Kevin McCarthy also floated these changes. And so, hey, meet the new boss, same as the old one. That said, this is a major policy goal that Republicans have, screwing over people who are going to retire. Not current elderly folks, but future elderly folks. So just so happens that a lot of their current voters happen to be people that are on Medicare and Social Security. So obviously, protect them, screw everyone else. That's how that works. Now, that said, do Republican voters feel the same way? No, Republican voters love Medicare, love Social Security. And it turns out they don't want, the government to make these kinds of cuts. What they do want the government to do, however, is to go after trans people. Yeah, I'm not kidding. And in August 2023, American Compass survey, along with YouGov, that sampled about 1,000 Republicans on what their policy goals would be. So what would they like Republican congresspeople to focus on? So I'm going to show you here an image from that poll, from the results. When asked, which do you think are the most important challenges facing America, these voters selected transgender activism, woke corporations, illegal immigration, critical race theory, and globalization. They had plenty of different categories to choose from. Worker power, regulation, tax rates, free trade. Yet the majority of issues that Republican voters wanted to focus on is mainly cultural stuff. Weighing the issues. Look at that. Illegal immigration tied with transgender activism for those issues you chose as most important and how you want your politicians to spend their time. So they want their politicians to spend as much time on transgender activism as they are on cracking down on illegal immigration, right? And then, of course, woke corporations barely edging out globalization. And then, of course, right behind globalization, critical race theory. Yes, that's right. Higher education at a paltry 2%. And then, of course, you have free trade, 3%. And by the way, the cultural consensus, new right, old right, basically, these are the different categories now of Republicans. There's the new right that's more focused on, again, these cultural issues, as opposed to the economic issues that the old right tends to be, the business right wing tend to be focused on. So just letting you know, and I'll put a link in the description of that poll if you want to take a look into it further, because it is pretty interesting. That said, Republican voters obviously very, very interested in focusing on a lot of the cultural stuff. Now, most of the Republicans in office are more of the old school Republicans. And they work for the corporations. They want to cut taxes for the rich. They want to deregulate. They want to crush unions. They want free trade, things like that. Now, those issues, Republican voters do not prefer the old school Republican orthodoxy, not as much as they used to. In fact, 41% of them now disagree with the old school Republican position on unions in saying that, oh, unions harm the economy. Well, 41% disagree and think actually unions, not so bad. 85% believe that the labor shortages that were reported by businesses, the nobody wants to work, they actually thought that those were a good thing because they said it will force employers to offer better jobs and pay higher wages, spreading more prosperity to the workers. That's 85% of these new Republicans. Wow. 77% support tariffs to boost manufacturing. 78% said the government should provide support to ensure America is a leader in advanced technologies like semiconductors, solar power. I had something in my throat there. All right. 57% chose the view that Wall Street investors are getting rich doing things that hurt the economy, over one that said that Wall Street investors play an important role in strengthening our economy. So that's a majority of these Republicans. And so on economic issues, I got to give Republicans credit. They at least know they're getting screwed. Okay? They understand it. Although, again, they're still not quite on the side of, for example, labor, although having 41% of them now supporting unionization and thinking that unions are a good thing that fight for, workers and stuff. Oh, that's a big shift. Huge. And it's driven mainly by young people. But unfortunately, you still have this focus on cultural issues. Sucks. Again, Republican voters laser focused on trans people. Now, here's the thing. That doesn't make any sense to me. Trans people don't affect your life, in any sort of negative way at all. So it makes you wonder why they're so focused on it. Why they're so focused on people who are trans and LGBTQ. I mean, do they understand that in this country, in the United States, according to Gallup polling, only anywhere between 0.5 and 1.6% of American adults identify as transgender? Now, there are slightly higher numbers among young people because young people are more, progressive and feel a little bit more comfortable identifying the way that they identify. But nonetheless, you have between, half a percentage and 2% of the entire population of the country, over 330 million people that identify as trans. Okay? That's a tiny portion of the country. And yet, you have politicians that are directed by the voters, by Republican voters, who score transgender issues as one of their as the top concern, along with illegal immigration. What? Why is the right so focused? Well, one, I guess, theory here is maybe that they think that this is a higher number, that there's suddenly they're inundated with transgender people, which again, I don't think, why would that be a problem? I don't know. But one survey showed that the public thinks that as many as 1 in 5 Americans That's 21% of the population they think is trans. What? That's ridiculous. No, I already gave you the actual numbers versus the real numbers. Or I'm sorry, versus what they think of the real numbers. They think 21%. Wow. Now, you know whose fault that is? Well, you got libs of TikTok. I mean, take your pick, right? Libs of TikTok, Matt Walsh, Ted Cruz, Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson. Oh, and by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wants to take away gender-affirming healthcare for trans kids. Look, here's the thing. Right-wing pundits, mainly, created this issue, causing Republican voters to vote in people like Marjorie Taylor Greene into office on the promise that she's going to fight this non-issue. And then the same voters, they get mad that these politicians haven't solved an issue that wasn't really an issue. And now, irony of ironies, Marjorie Greene is mad at her Republican colleagues for not helping her at all with her stupid bills that solve a problem that's not actually a problem. Again, irony after irony, okay? Even more ironic is that when she says, oh, Republicans go out on the campaign trail and go on TV and do their 5-minute hearing videos and post on social media and say all this garbage about how they're going to fight it and stop it. No, she just explained what she does. That's you. That's exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene does all the time to a freaking T, and she doesn't even realize it. Doesn't even realize it at all. It's just amazing. A little bit of self-reflection would be fantastic right now. Look, this is why Republicans, the current Republican Party, is an absolute joke. I mean, they create these non-problems and then vow to fight and vow to solve these non-problems and then get mad that these non-problems were never solved, even though there were never problems to begin with. Again, non-problems, right? Critical race theory. We got to get that critical race theory out of the schools. It was never in the K through 12 schools to begin with. College level course. Doesn't matter. Oh, we got to get those litter boxes out of the classrooms. They were never in there. Never in there. Because you don't have an epidemic of children identifying as cats. That's not real. They're just make-up monsters to fight. And because you have politicians in there that don't actually want to solve the real economic concerns because they work for their rich benefactors. So keep that in mind. If you're supporting Republicans because you're worried about the trans agenda, you are being duped and screwed massively. There's no other way to say it.